do you feel like in your life that you've had experiences, or maybe you're awesome and it's all the time, that you have had peace that surpasses your understanding? How do we do that? How do we get to that place more? Why do we associate comfort with peace? But like, how as parents can we help our children have more peace?
Hey man, you want to talk about God?
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
So like after we have conversations like this, where we're talking about God, faith in our lives, all these kinds of things, right? I feel like whether we're doing it on the podcast or whether we're doing it, you know, in a basement at your mom's house, you know, wherever it may be, that actually happened. We get, there's like this feeling afterwards of peace, of like fullness, of like, wow, that was a lot. And I feel like there's more to process, and I want to keep thinking about some of those things and keep going through. But I have heard you multiple times, including on this podcast and right then, describe it as hazy. Could you elaborate on that? Like peace equals hazy, or
to me?
Yes, to you.
Yeah.
Or is that like not the feeling? Because for me, it's this intense feeling of peace.
Yeah.
Like I feel really satisfied and peaceful and not anxious, or I'm worried for not. Like,
Yeah. I think that comes down to a question of like defining what peace is.
but for you,
But for
hazy,
me-
what does that mean?
Well, I think that the haziness is actually a byproduct of my heart or my mind feeling at peace. So I get to whatever that state is internally, and then my view of the world or how I'm moving through it is just kind of this like hazy. I describe it as hazy.
Right.
And I think like the why, like I would describe that as peace. I guess you asked that, or a sense of peace in a moment. Because I think what doesn't bring peace to me, like in a practical sense, a lot of times it's all the information that's coming in.
Yeah.
Like what I'm seeing on my phone,
Right.
whatever inputs are coming in and
Right.
being like downloaded in any minute. And I feel like we're always in a state of processing information, which I would say generally doesn't lead to for me, a feeling of peace, because there's a lot going on.
Just brings more questions for me.
Right. And more things I don't have answers to.
Right.
Which leaves me vulnerable or
Right. But I think it's
feeling
funny
insecure.
because like at the end of one of these podcast episodes, I don't feel like I know everything, and I don't feel like all my questions have been answered. You know what I mean? Like I don't feel like that is completed,
right.
but there's still a piece there.
Well, yeah, and that's also like when I think we have this idea, maybe socially, we set difficult challenges in front of us, and we think I just need to. I'm going to complete this challenge, and when I complete this challenge, I'll feel peace. But I think overwhelmingly we don't. If you're in your workplace and you know you're a technician for something, you're like, I want to perform well in this. I want to do X, Y, and Z, help so that I really want to be a manager. And if I get to that status, I'll feel a sense of like achievement, which should equal peace. Achievement equals peace, maybe is what we kind of like the equation we work in our head.
Okay.
But we get to that achievement. And I think if I'm being honest with myself, my personality type, not for everybody, but for me, I achieve something that feeling of like hype.
Yep.
Of psychedness is psyched. I'm psyched for a second, and then that's fleeting. And so peace doesn't really come from that. I just think,
And then
well,
there's
what's
probably
the
like
next thing I
another
need to do?
achievement
There's
after
always
that, right?
another thing. So achievement doesn't bring peace in that sense. But when I come out of these conversations, I think that haziness is a product of focus and of intention. And it's just kind of like, I'm not in a place to process any other information, and I don't want to.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of sitting in that
Right.
moment. I'm being present there. So it's just like everything is a little hazy and I feel like nothing else matters right now.
Right.
A lot of things do matter still in the outside world, but like for that moment, I think I feel this like calm. I just dedicated a decent amount of time to speaking about the Prince of Peace, right? God, and the byproduct of being in the presence of God, the byproduct of putting our attention on Him and wanting to know more about Him, to learn more. Like you can't help but feel a sense of peace to that.
Complete side topic.
Yeah.
Once again, you said that in this moment, like you dedicated all this time spending time with God, right? Is what we're doing right now. And I don't think I've like consciously thought about that because I think that talking about spending time with God, which I feel like is a topic that we could talk about for hours, and we may end up doing it. I don't know. But this idea that spending time with God, like in my head, it's this, I'm gonna be in a room and I'm gonna have like my Bible, and I'm gonna like put my phone on do not disturb, and I'm gonna be like these behaviors and this intentionality around. I'm gonna put everything away. I'm gonna try to put all the distractions away, and just spend time with God because. One of the things that I'm working on a lot in my faith and in my relationship with Jesus is that my relationship isn't a one-way street. It's a two-way street of where I want to be in prayer and I want to pray and ask boldly for things and then have faith and belief in those things, but also leave time for God to speak back to me. Right. Yeah. Whether that I'm not talking necessarily about audibly, but even just in the word and like finding verses to go and read about what I'm praying for, whatever that may be, right? But thinking about this of like in my head, like, yes, we're talking about God. Yes, we're doing this. Yes, we're recording it. It's going to be out on the internet, right? But in my head, having conversations with you like this is like I'm just hanging out with one of my best friends. We're just talking. But I think you said that and it just got my brain running of like, no, this is 100% spending time with God.
Well, I think we put a lot of pressure on the idea of spending time with God.
Yeah.
And we think like, this is not to discredit the act of getting up early.
Right.
Of putting worship music on, of turning off your phone, of actually getting the physical text, like getting a Bible in front of you. And eliminate distractions. I think that's part of it. Right. It's really cool. But I think we would miss something, and maybe we do, in saying like we have to eliminate the distractions in order to hear from God. And really, I think that like a lot of the distractions that come around, like God is in everything. Yeah. And is it more about like eliminating the distractions so that you can hear from God, or is it in the midst of the distractions? Being able to hear what's God trying to say to you. You brought up the last time we talked about the videos that Mr. Beast does and his generosity. You could say that those videos are coming on Twitter, YouTube, whatever, and like those are all distractions from God. Right. But in the same sense, that distraction can lead you to. It just depends what you're looking for. Right. Like the opportunity to see God in everything. I think if we have that perspective, if that's the lens of faith that we're looking through, like we can totally be in the presence of God and be in traffic and be on our phone or be wherever. I think so. I think it's a yes and conversation or a both and. I don't know what the right.
So two things. So first off, I need something to write on so I can write these things down because I don't have it right.
Maybe we should sit with a desk in between us.
We could 100%. Okay, so
but that's also how our conversations go. Is like it's tough because sometimes you have a thing in your mind, like, oh, I can't wait to talk about this one next, and then 2 seconds later you made another good point. And I'm like, yes. And if we try to hold on to our thought so much so that we can present it, we miss what actually is going on too. So you got to stay present. Right. Breathe. Take a breath. Yep, that's good.
Love that. Okay, so I think that, and I don't actually even know if this is real. Right. I think that I justify trying to eliminate those distractions in my head out of like this reverence or respect of like, I want to do this. I don't want to do this. But what's interesting is that I think in those times, right, where I am being very intentional and I feel like I'm saying the word intentional a lot, and I don't hate it. But I feel like I almost leave more of those times almost being frustrated because I don't have the same sense of peace after those that like I would feel after this conversation. Not sometimes I do, but not all the time.
So what do you, if you were going to describe in that sense, what is the peace you're looking for? Like, what does peace mean in that context?
Yeah. I think in that context, it is this kind of satisfaction, and not of like, oh, everything's been answered, but in I've gotten everything out and everything's been heard. And I think that, there's something really special about maybe praying about or for or with or about my children. Something very special about that to me. And I think what's very interesting is like I'll have a moment with me and God, phone off, all that kind of stuff, right? And kind of be praying for my sons, and then I will basically go through the Bible and start trying to find, and that's when I will like pull up my phone or get on my computer or something just because it makes
resources.
it easier.
Yeah.
Exactly. Of looking through the Bible of like Jesus talking about his Father, right? Or prophecies talking about Father, Messiah, like from the Old Testament, like looking at all these different things of like a father and a son relationship and going through that. And there is a very, very specific satisfaction of when you're like praying for something or you're hoping for something, believing for something. And then you like read a Bible verse and you're like, huh.
Yeah.
Like, I'm cool. I'm good. You know? And then sometimes that doesn't happen. And I don't think I'm at fault. And I don't think God is at fault. Right? It's just sometimes maybe I am more receiving sometimes. I don't know. I don't know what it is. Sure. Right? But there's something very satisfying and peaceful about coming out of that and going, I was heard, and, I'm believing for this. And I feel like in this moment, all that's happened is my faith has been raised. Not at the like, I want my faith to be raised coming out of those moments, not at the same spot it was, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happens in these conversations.
Yeah.
Is I come out of them, even we're not sitting here like reading out of our Bibles and going through text and whatever that may be, right? But it's this something of where I feel closer to God coming out of this. I feel like my faith, we've all heard this example of like faith muscle in church. Like you got to work it out, Yeah. Your biceps get bigger when you do some curls. Sure. And your faith gets bigger when you do some faith curls.
Yeah.
Whatever. But I feel like
recite some scriptures, do whatever.
But I feel like this has that effect, and it's like it's growing, it's getting bigger,
And that's why it's a both and conversation. Like one is like one is beneficial, the other is also equally beneficial, I think, because I also think about this a lot too. Is like God, the Word of God, exists outside of the text. I think it is really healthy and good to have a reverence for the text, but the text is not all there is. Like Jesus is the living Word, and just if Jesus and God wants intimacy with us, like having these conversations, that's engaging with the Word. Yeah. It's just in a different way. Yeah. So you can walk out of these conversations with a similar feeling. Yeah. As I think if you sit down and read the Gospels. Yeah. But there's also times I've sat down with a text and just been like, I'm just going to read the Bible. Right. And been like, a little aimless in it, and you read something, you're like, what? I don't know if I'm walking away with anything.
Right. Do you think that like those moments compared to others is because of how you go into it?
Yeah.
Like what you're believing or expecting to receive back out?
Yeah, I think if there's a difference if I am intentional about going to the Word, and this a lot of comes just through like knowledge and kind of experience with it. Like there are times where if I know I am lacking peace on healing or physically or something like that, I know I can go specifically to Isaiah 53. I know I can go to, I think, 1 Peter 2:24, which by his stripes we were healed. And I just like go back and I was like, I know I've already been healed, like, so I can go there. If I go to it being like, I don't really know what I need, but I know I should be in my Bible. Those are the times I feel like sometimes something really special and cool happens out of it. And sometimes I'm left being like, did I just run to this?
Right.
It feels weird to say like as a crutch, to make myself feel better, but did I? Is that the way God really wanted to speak to me in that moment?
In all reality,
I don't know.
The Bible's probably like the best crutch you could ever have.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, like if you're going to need a crutch in your life, and in a moment, and you're using the Bible for that, like let's give you a round of applause because like. That's,
well, I don't do that all the time. So
right. But when you do,
when I do it,
can you let me know?
It's a healthy crutch.
I'll record a clap. And
I like that. So like I just to kind of go back, I think for me in that context, when I asked you to define peace, I think the way that I would easily describe my experience or I feel mentally is like stillness.
That's so good.
And I think about there's stuff in the text that would point me to that. I think the disciples are in the boat, the storms, the waves come and go through, and Jesus is sleeping in the bottom. He comes up, right? I think he rebukes them for having little faith. But he says to the waves,
be gone.
Peace, be still. And so I equate biblically peace equals de-escalate, stillness.
I think that's wild because I have a very vivid picture in my head right now of down in North Carolina, my aunt and uncle own a lake house. And we used to go as kids and we wouldn't even stay in their house. We would literally take tents and like put up the tent in their yard that's on the lake.
Sounds miserable. And
fish until 2:00 in the morning and then go sleep in the tent. And then get back up when the sun was coming up to fish some more. It's just what we did. Yeah. It was fun. It was fun.
I'm sure it was fun.
It was fun. But I will like the imagery of being out on their dock at 6 in the morning, 6:30 in the morning, 7 in the morning. And there's a fog coming off of glass water.
Yeah.
Right. And we would always go out there, and I remember my uncle coming out there, and I remember him telling us that if you get up to go and fish, you have to sit there for a couple minutes before you're allowed to fish.
That's great.
And I think as a kid, I was always like, I could be catching a fish right now, and I'm just sitting here. But then as I got a little bit older, I started to appreciate it more. But just sitting there and that like that imagery of it was woods all around and then lake and
well, there's always something that is, I think, like the story of creation of Christ is, I just believe, like woven through the fabric of the universe, right? That is still water, open water in the morning. Is one of those things that, or just in general, I guess, not in the morning, but specifically when you're describing that in the morning, quintessential to I think, a very accurate realization of what the peace of God is.
Right.
Like we can, as humans, we can look at that and have like we can connect to that feeling.
Right.
I think about like the times we've gone to like Deep Creek and got a house for a weekend with the families or whatever.
Right.
And there's always a moment of just being like, well, we got to get down to the water and just see it.
Right.
So you can experience the peace when no one's on it. And that makes sense too, because like think of the poem Genesis.
Yeah.
A mist hung over the water. That's the presence of God before all of creation. Like that was like, so even the writers, the writer, is it Moses? Did Moses write?
I don't think we know. I don't think there's confirmed.
It's a different one. Not theologians.
Yes.
But even from that very beginning, like that's, somebody would have had the ability to look over the water and equate that to the presence of God. Like in the beginning, God hovered over the waters. That's so I think that you're super like on point of just kind of trying to, in our earthly experience, describe the feeling of peace. Yeah. And on a really high level. Yeah. And something, it's always, water is cool because it's something so much bigger than you. And there's stuff below it that you can't see. Right. And there's stuff above it going on, but that still water is just
right. Before this, you had written out some definitions of peace. Yeah. And I was looking over at one of them. And it says freedom from disturbance, calmness, or tranquility. Mm-hmm. And like, if someone ever says the word tranquility, which I don't feel like I hear very often. Like,
yeah, to be tranquil.
Right. But I don't feel like it's a word used in like common conversations. Sure. Right. But whenever I hear that word, I feel like I still think of water. Yeah. And like, I don't even know why. Yeah. Like I just do. Yeah. I don't think anybody's ever told me like.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that.
Tranquil water.
Still water.
But I think I do.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Just thinking about these things. Yeah. And I think we're talking about this because peace is this thing that's talked about. Churches, you pray for it, pray for peace over this.
Oh man.
Right?
Yeah.
I feel like,
and it's desired by everybody.
Correct.
It's universally, everybody wants some peace.
Right.
Have some peace and quiet.
Right. Exactly. Right. And what does that really mean? Because I'm just wondering, like, if I've never like studied peace or like gone on this mission to figure out everything I can about peace and what it means and what it looks like. But like thinking about this and just having all this kind of imagery in my head now and going through this of like, how many times or how many situations have I been in where there was a lot of peace around me, but I was just too consumed with something else to even notice. Of like how you were talking about the conversation of like, I think of something good to say, and then I'm trying to remember it, so I'm not even listening to what you're saying so that I can say what I want to say. Yeah.
And like, that is like the thing. It's always like these external concerns, fears, maybe our ego and stuff going through, like just like that operating to say like, we're just not being present and being still in that moment. Like, and that's, it's so hard. I was literally just having this conversation with my wife. We were kind of like texting, and we're in this process of like sleep training our child, and she's doing amazing. But like now, where she is used to being rocked to sleep, will do bath time, go up, lotion, which is very important for babies. You taught me that years ago. You got a lotion. I was like, why do we have the lotion? Like, they get dry skin, sensitive. PJ's on, read a book or whatever, and then she would get rocked to bed. And now she's at the spot because she knows she's just going to be laid in her crib and she's going to fall asleep like a big girl. That as soon as you get the PJs on and you like kind of like pick her up to comb her hair or to go to read story time, she just immediately cuddles. Right. Because she's like trying to I'm going to be present here in this moment while I can. Right. And it's always the thing too is I always would think about when we go through anything in life. Well, two things. We think that peace equals lack of suffering, or the like suffering is not like, I think we equate peace to comfort. Yeah. And I don't know if that's correct or appropriate.
Okay.
And I think we could look at Paul.
Okay.
to validate that in the scripture.
Okay.
Specifically, if we thought about in Philippians 4, when Paul talks about peace.
I can do whatever I want through Christ who strengthens me.
That's in the same chapter.
That's not the right
That's not the
verse
verse that I was going to say.
No, I didn't
But
say
he talks
the
about
verse
peace
right.
that surpasses understanding.
Yeah.
So yeah, in Philippians 4,
Yes.
Paul is talking about
I can do all
praying
things through Christ who strengthens me. I can do whatever I want through Christ who strengthens me.
anytime I want.
Yes.
No, he's talking about the peace of God that surpasses understanding. And the context of that, he's writing that from prison.
Yes.
So he is not in a place of comfort, but he is experiencing peace
Right.
in that comfort.
Technically, it depends on which prison you're talking about, because prison in Rome was kind of comfy.
Okay. You don't know that.
Well, he could do whatever he wanted to in Rome.
Sure.
So I would assume.
House arrest. But
Right.
have you ever talked to anybody
But
on
like
house
people
arrest?
could come over and hang out. You're telling me if you were on house arrest, you wouldn't have a very comfy like recliner to sit in?
But eventually, you'd want to get out.
True.
Ultimately.
True. Okay. Sorry.
I don't know if that. Okay, so I'll just ask you a question, then you can rebuttal. Because I'm saying I think that we connect peace
Yes.
to comfort,
Yes.
and I don't know that that's the peace that God's actually refers to, or necessarily, or like that we need to be experiencing comfortability
Yeah.
to experience peace.
Okay. So I have so many things to say
Great.
that just came to me. I haven't been thinking about them. I have so many things to say. In my own life, I don't know exactly how many times, but I can point to a few times very specifically where I do felt like I had peace that surpassed my understanding.
Were you in a position of comfort?
No. Every single time I was extremely uncomfortable. Every single time something not great was happening around me. But after spending some time there in prayer, listening to worship music in my car, whatever it was, I was very... well, here's what I would say. I would say me personally, inside my own body, yes, I was very comfortable because I was so satisfied. I was full. I was at peace.
But your circumstances.
But the situations around me, the circumstances around me, no, extremely uncomfortable. Because, and I think it's really interesting of this whole peace versus comfort thing, because I would say that I want to talk and I want to say things like we, or like I think all of us, but like I don't want to talk for other people, but I don't want to keep having this happen where I'm like, oh, I didn't mean to say that.
I think we can have grace for you.
Oh, thank you, man. Love you, man.
Love you, man.
But I think that people seek out comfort in like everything.
Over peace?
I think what you're saying, I agree with you that I think people correlate them to be the same. And what I'm saying is I think that they are different. And I think that if you asked even me, even probably earlier today, if I said if I could be more comfortable or if I could be at peace, based on my own experiences, I would have said comfortable. Is what I want. And I know that I shouldn't be in my comfort zone. And I know that when I'm out of my comfort zone is when I'm growing. Right. And when I'm getting better. And when I'm doing those things, right? But this goes back to the whole getting up early in the morning and working out and all that kind of stuff, right?
And a lot of times I think when we get uncomfortable, we do those things, you experience peace then.
Yeah. So if I get up in the morning, work out, spend time with God, I'm at peace. And going in my day. And I feel like that's one of the reasons why I feel like those days are always really good days.
But you had to suffer a little bit.
But I wasn't comfortable. But if I stay in my bed, comfortable. Got my pillow, my blanket, right? Depending on if my wife's still in bed, I get some cuddles. You know what I'm saying? It's comfortable. He said, yeah. Comfortable, right? But then when I wake up, now it's, I slept in later than I was planned. I feel like I'm already behind.
Yeah.
I feel like I have all this stuff to do, and I'm not at peace at all. It's like chaos all of a sudden of like, we gotta go. And I think that is really, really why do we associate comfort with peace?
I think it's just a warped perception. I think it's we just twisted the meaning. We're not actually thinking about what the meaning is. And I think we will look for things and be like, in our own understanding, this will be there. We'll say, well, this is an issue that I have. I have stress. I have like rapid thoughts when I lay down personally. Like, well, if I just tick the box over here, that will equal peace over here. And all of those external things are actually not going to be the thing that gives me peace. Yeah. Because there'll always be more external things, more external pressures. More life is going to happen to all of us. We can't escape that. Yeah.
All right, let me ask you a question. Well, two questions. First question is, do you feel like in your life that you've had experiences, or maybe you're awesome and it's all the time, that you have had peace that surpasses your understanding?
I think that's happened for sure. Okay. And I can think specifically about times where I thought I should have it. Okay. And I didn't.
And you didn't. Okay. So if I'm thinking about the times in my life where I feel like I have experienced that, and you're thinking about the times in your life where you feel like you have experienced that, right? How do we do that? How do we get to that place more?
Yeah. So I would just share, I guess, my personal experience of like a time I experienced it. And it definitely came from most of the times I felt extreme peace are in situations where I've had, just being totally transparent, you know this about me, but like I've had a couple open heart surgeries. The most recent experience for me was being in an operating room, like getting ready for that. You're in a situation where you're basically just stripped down to a gown. They lay you on a cold table. There's a million things going around, beeping, lots of people running around, like moving, and you're getting ready for in my case, an 8 to 10 hour surgery. And there's a moment for me there where I always I felt like really proud because I have like good composure in that moment. But really it's because I've surrendered control. Like I know it's outside of my hands. Like I can do nothing here. Yeah. And believe, and like in that moment, like when all this stuff goes on, like I felt like I was given the grace to let go of control and worry and just be like, you're just breathing. And I felt totally still, totally calm. And that's not of my own work. Right. That's definitely the Spirit of God. Good.
Follow up. And if any of this gets too personal, then we'll just cut it out.
It's okay.
So here's the crazy thing is you're talking about going in this operating room. You can't do anything. Like you have to surrender to that. Right. And that's what you did in that moment. Right. Here's the question, because we've talked about this before, is there was another example of you in an operating room where you couldn't do anything.
Yeah. That's my second example of whenever I thought I should have peace and experienced none of it.
So you were in an operating room watching someone else.
Yeah.
And you couldn't do anything about it. Yeah. And you've told me that you were freaking out.
Yeah.
You were going crazy.
Yeah.
What was the difference? Was it that you were the one on the table versus somebody else?
Yeah.
Like, why couldn't in the second moment, why wasn't the thought there like, surrender, I can't do anything about this?
Yeah. Well, I think to tell the story, I think it just need to be, I was just going to be totally transparent and kind of vulnerable about it. Ultimately, the second experience when I did not have peace was the birth of our child, our first child, Ruby. And the backstory of that, it was something we believed like that we would receive, like a promise from God that we were going to be parents. And it was a multi-year kind of process and journey. And to be totally honest, like we experienced loss through that. Abby had I don't know what the right word to say there, because it's not like I didn't have a baby inside of me, but like there was a miscarriage.
Yeah.
And I think so we experienced this idea of the high and low of like, we believe that God has this promise for us, and then we believe it's this time and this thing going, and then that is removed. And that's its own freaking thing to wrestle with and to come to terms with and to get over and be healed from, ultimately. So when it came to the birth of Ruby, we get to the day and we're like, oh my gosh, we've made it through. And that whole pregnancy, I struggled a lot and felt a lot of pressure that I couldn't share those things with Abby Grace, because I felt like I didn't want my lack of faith to impact her faith. And I did share some stuff with her, I think, and I shared with you and a couple of friends. But ultimately, we get to that experience, and she's in labor for 24 hours and pushing for 9 hours. And we see the head, but then from there on, it was like 6 hours of nothing moving. And then it's always comes in the devil attacks in, like, I think whispers in a moment, and you hear people muttering around the room, and like, it's like the baby's not going to have oxygen for much longer. But it goes through, and so like Abby did not want to have a C-section, or was hoping not to, but ultimately it's like, we'll do whatever we need to do. And then they decide that they're going to go in and take her and remove Ruby with forceps. And then, so it's like all the whispers, those are parts of words that are like kind of attacking me, filling me with fear. And then they bring out these forceps that they're going to use, and they show us, and these things are like medieval battle axe tongs. And like, that's not a good image.
I'm not laughing at your situation. I'm laughing at your description.
But I'm just like looking at it, it's like, what are you going to do with those? You cut her head off. And I think you're right. There's a difference of being the person on the table and watching the person you love on the table. And it's much easier to be the person on the table, because you can just control the things, like you can surrender those things.
Right. But then
to try to do that.
Continue that story though.
Yeah. So we're in them, and we make the decision that we're going to do an assisted delivery, and they get Abby prepped. And this is a new experience for me, because I'm always the one that gets prepped for these things. And then they were like, okay, you need to stay here. We're going to go. And at that time, I text you, I text a couple other people, and was like, pray for me, please. Like, and go through it, like, and like, I'm looking for encouragement. I'm like throwing out the lifelines, basically. Right. And then I was sitting just alone for 20 minutes while they got her in the room. And then they finally brought me in, and I felt like I was part of all of the beeping noises, the distractions. And I was looking at that and looking at Abby on the table, and I lost the battle in my mind, and all I could think of like was something really bad is going to happen again. And all I could think about was the loss previously, and how are we going to deal with this? How am I going to be able to help my wife deal with this, let alone myself? And so I'm just sitting beside Abby, and just consumed with fear. Yeah. And I think as Christian men, especially like, not that I don't think either of us ascribe to this like super patriarchal kind of like environment, but like I do feel a responsibility to like lead in faith and set an example for my family.
I want you to continue, but now looking back, right? Obviously not in the moment, but now looking back, that moment you were being attacked left and right of all these small whispers, right? But would you now, even after this conversation we're having right now, of earlier we were talking about not being present and being out here when around us is actually like not being present in that moment. And what you just said was like you were already thinking about the future.
Correct.
You were already going, okay, if this happens, then I'm going to have to figure out this, and then I'm going to have to figure out this, and how can I do this, and how can I help with this, and how can I fix the situation, right? Which is where
totally
both of us go.
Yes. Totally
but you weren't
from being in the
present.
moment. So I had no peace in the present because I wasn't there. Right. And then this is the magical part of the whole thing, and what was just a teaching moment for me too. Because Abby had taken her phone with her, and they usually, when you go into any kind of procedure, they'll like ask you like, can is there anything you want to listen to? And Abby had turned on, had them playing Old Church Basement on her phone. So it's like just sitting there beside us. And at the moment when all this stuff is going around, like I'm looking at the winds and the waves, the song Miracles is on. And I'm overwhelmed with fear. I look over to my left and I see Abby with just completely vulnerable open, and her eyes are closed, and she is on there. She's just saying miracles and miracles and many little miracles. And I was so touched and hit by her peace and her faith in that moment. And it was just, I was like, oh my gosh, she's in it. Like she's in the presence of God right now. Like it's going to be okay. Yeah. And it was, and like, that's the power of relationship and having people in our lives. Cause we're not always going to be the strongest person in the room. Right. You're not always going to have the faith to move mountains. I mean, gosh, like, and what we need are people with us that can be the example and can be in that. Cause like her peace, her experience in the presence of God allowed me to access it. And it still felt doubts and concern, but like that was an immediate calming factor is she is. And I was like, oh my gosh, I am the disciple on the boat saying, Jesus, do you not care about us? We're all going to die in this storm. Right. I was that person. Right. And my wife is doing the one needful thing that she talks about with Ron, and she's down, just laying down with Jesus. Yeah. Rest of me like, it's going to be okay. Yeah. And seconds later, Ruby comes out healthy, clean. Not clean. She was not clean. Right. People should also tell you what babies look like when they're birthed. Small it was aliens. Something out of like the Lord of the Rings, like birthing an Urukai out of the thing. Dude, it like came out and she's like all charcoal and stuff like that. And I was just like looking around. I was like, everybody okay? This is normal? This is okay? And then her little cry. And it's just, it was,
just call your baby an orc?
Urukai.
Right.
Because they were like, anyway. It was just, it was a moment, and I wrestled with guilt from it, honestly, for a while, being like, why didn't I have that? Yeah. Like, I should have been, I've been prepared. Yeah. I've been through hard situations, specifically like physically or medically. Yeah. Like, how did I allow myself to have fear win and conquer my mind and my heart to where it's like, I was literally just full of doubt. Yeah. And like, is God going to show up? Is this going to be okay?
So I've never been through either one of those situations of being through surgery like that, and my wife giving birth was both times was a much different experience than what you guys had. And so I have a question. I have been the dad in the room while your wife's giving birth. And in that moment, I don't think I've ever felt more helpless because you can't do anything. You can't say anything. Like nothing. There's nothing.
Even you try to help them breathe, you're doing it wrong.
Right. And like, even though probably the best thing you could possibly do is like pray or play worship music or something, like I would be scared that she wouldn't like the song. Or like, I would be scared that she'd be like, shut up and hold my hand or whatever it is. Stop thinking about you. I'm going through this, which like I can't blame her for. Yeah. But I'm also throwing out these crazy hypotheticals in my head that probably wouldn't happen because it would probably help her, right? And in that situation, it seems like, obviously you guys had already gone through a loss, and then going to this, you obviously had an expectation that child's gonna be born. Yeah. You're gonna have this child. This promise is gonna be there, right? And in that situation, when your wife is going through this, I would look at how you're describing it and how you're saying it, of where you were not at peace, or you had not accepted either outcome.
That's a great way of looking at it.
Right? And my real question is when you're going into surgery, right? And you've been on the table, and you've had that peace and that like surrender, right? Is there this sense of like, well, I don't have a choice, like whatever option it is, like I'm either going to be here or I'm not. Like, I don't know. So is that even a thing of where you kind of have to accept both outcomes when you're on the table, and you didn't, or you didn't in that moment.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I'm sure that's part of it. Honestly, I think and I think part of it too is just like, I think that it's possible to have been in my position and to have operated in peace. I think that's possible. I think that I made choices and allowed the circumstances and the noise to dictate how I felt inside. I mean, I think you're always going to feel it, but I think I let that narrative win. Yeah. If I'm just being totally honest.
So another like hypothetical question, and I'm going to ask you this question, but I hate it when people ask me these questions, because now, I don't even know if you would agree with this, but I wouldn't want anything to be different about that story. I wouldn't want you to go back and change something, even if you could, because now it's such a powerful story. Yeah. Such a powerful testimony of in that moment what happens. Right?
And it helped me in a way. It takes not pressure, but it gave me a new lens in which to see the strength of my wife.
Wow.
And I always feel like we're meant to be like equally yoked. And I think that like, I've always said like, I want a wife that is challenging, hopefully in a good way. And that's somebody that's like, I can't be everything. We're not called to be everything spiritually for everybody in our lives. And it was like, whoa, like this isn't just me on here. And it probably never was. I maybe just put that expectation on myself. It's like, I always have to be the one that's like, well, I used to struggle really hard with processing and dealing with moments where my wife was expressing frustration or disappointment or doubt. My quick response would be like, almost deal with it the way my dad would deal with something with me. And I'd be like, well, we're overcomers in Christ, you blah, 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 blah. Just all this stuff that says like, we're going to have more faith than the situation. Yeah. And really what that did was just made my wife feel like there's no room to have a conversation. Like everything that we were trying to do, I was kind of like the opposite of it. I was just like using the word as a hammer, like a tool that's just gonna like beat this thing out, like doubt, fear, cover. Like it's like, no, there's no place for that here. And I don't necessarily like disagree with that. Yeah. But like it was always like I felt like my default response was like, I'm gonna bring faith into this situation no matter what. And if I don't do it, I don't know that anybody else will. Yeah. And that's just not true. And that was a real like, you're right. I don't know that I would change it. I wish I could respond better, but my desire, my belief is that I will respond differently in the future. Right. And I will have learned.
So I guess that was really the question of it. Let's say that I hope and pray that you never are, but if you were in a similar situation in the future, what would you do differently? How would you act differently? Like before I asked the question of like, how do we achieve peace that surpasses our understanding more? Yeah. So looking back on an experience, like what would you do differently?
I think it would be like winning the battle of my mind, as silly as that sounds. Yeah. But the idea of like we talked about, it's like I wasn't being present, so I had no peace in the present because I wasn't there. So hopefully I would go into it knowing that and be willing and vulnerable enough to just be there with her, focus on comforting my wife, supporting my wife, and not give in to all the thoughts and the worries and projecting and worst case scenarios. And I don't know that it's kind of that thing too of like, we always think it's a behavior we have to change, right? Something we have to do differently. Right. And it is still doing something differently, but I think the difference needs to be like, I need to be more present. Right. I need to.
And like when you walked when they finally came and got you and you came into the room, was Abby already listening to music before you came in? Yeah. And you were still having all these thoughts, and she was already in her moment.
I was so preoccupied by all the nurses, and there was a student that was helping with the delivery too, and I was like, why are we getting a student in here? Like, which is also not a great way of thinking about things, but like that's just where we're at. Yeah. And all the tools laid out, and like that is when I have gone into the room when I'm being operated on too, it's like I don't look at any of that stuff. I just like look at the bed and lay down, and I also it's just different. But I was looking at everything surrounding and totally didn't focus on the worship that was happening.
Yeah.
And we do that a lot, I think. There's worship happening all around us. Like I can walk into a church service and I'm just looking at like, because we have a church that has a lot of production stuff. Like I'm looking at like what's going on, who's doing like. And
I think
I'm not even focusing.
I don't even remember if it was in this episode or in a previous one, but you were talking about how like it all depends on how you're looking at things, of like what you see and what you do, of somebody struggling to buy something in front of you at the grocery store and doing that, and then that could like that's showing this generosity and loving on someone and being like that is a form of worship, right? And doing that, or you could just ignore it and be like looking at the trashy magazines on the stand right by the candy, you know what I mean? I wanted to say something else though that wasn't about the trashy magazines by the candy in the checkout. You know what I'm talking about, though?
No,
right?
I don't even.
Jeez. Okay. Well,
I know what you're talking about. It's like people.
About. Right. I think you said something that was very interesting to me.
I also do a lot of order pickup.
Right. You're an Uber Eats kind of guy.
No,
you order it and then you drive and pick it up.
Yeah.
You Uber Eats for yourself.
Yeah. I'm my own Uber driver.
Right. You talked about being equally yoked, and that means spiritually, by the way, for anyone out there. Contextually, I do know that one. And you talked about how in that moment it gave you this picture of your wife's strength, but also she was in this worship moment, in this piece, and then you looked at her and went, oh. And you got something from that, right? And I think I've been in this very interesting situation because I feel like for years, my wife, scripturally, knows a lot more than I do. My wife's faith is amazing and incredible. And it's not that mine isn't, right? This isn't like this comparison game, and I don't want it to be. But I think that her intentionality and her the work that she puts in, like it's not work in like a weird way. Like she's not like, oh, I have to go to work and read the Bible kind of thing. It's like, but the effort that she puts in, she has 3 Bibles upstairs, and you can flip through all 3 of them, and they're underlined and wrote notes written in the sides of it, the margins. That's what they're called, and things highlighted. And she's got notebook on notebook on notebook of like, you could just flip through all of them, and it's just notes and verses and prayers and writing down all these things. And it's been it is a very humbling thing. And it's also a very motivational thing of I want to go deeper. I want to continue to grow, and I want to continue to be in the Word and continue to pray and continue to have conversations like this and continue to do all those things because I want to grow. And I think what's interesting is like, it's not this comparison game, and I don't go, oh, she's better than me because I feel like she does this. I don't do that.
Right. Because everybody has a different practice
right.
But it is her doing that though is like, for you at least, it's visible proof of the commitment, of the consistency, of the time. And
what's incredible is it's not even this, it's not a competition either. Of like, oh, I have to do more. I have to spend more time in the Word every day than she does. Or I have but there is this very, very interesting like kind of thought process that I have of I do want to like catch up to her. And I do want to one day surpass. But there, like, you couldn't do that. But like in my head, I want to.
Yeah.
Not in an unhealthy way, and not because like I have this thought of like I have to lead our family or I want to be better than, right? It's out of this thing of like I look at our marriage, and we've had amazing times and we've had really crappy times. Mm-hmm. But I know how strong we are together. And if like we're at these places in our relationships right now, and if I can move up here, then how much better is it going to be for both of us, for all of us, for everyone involved, for our children? But there's like this thought of like how much even better can it be?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the thing that's really cool there too is like, it's like, I can equate this to like we do the accountability texts on getting up and moving our bodies, exercising, right? And there is something whenever I see you text, or we'll say Reggie, who's a monster of a guy, huge human being,
D1 athlete, killing the game.
Yeah. And I see it, like I look at those texts of him working out, throwing out these numbers, and it inspires me to get off my butt and move. I want to grow. You said like, she's here. I want to come up to here. How much better will we be? Well, the reality is she'll keep growing because she'll like, you're just going to progress together. Right. It's like continual improvement. Right. It's not a competition to say like, let's be equals in this understanding or this physical strength or whatever. Right. But just I know I'll never be as strong as Reggie. Right. But like, I am inspired by his commitment, his consistency, him getting after it, that says like, I'm going to grow in my own way personally. Right.
So this raises a very interesting question, right? Of this whole equally yoked thing. Can we talk about it for a second?
Sure.
When we talk about being equally yoked with your partner, with your spouse, right? We're talking about it's a spiritual faith-based thing. It's not like how much housework you do on a daily basis kind of thing. You weren't listening at all?
I was. You're talking about how we got to work on a thing whenever we're doing something, because we like you look over sometimes or like we got technology where it's like we just continue to keep talking as if they're staring right at me, because we could just be it's a spiritual thing. Yes. It's not like how much work you do around the house, because clearly women should do the majority of the work around the house.
Wow.
Kidding.
Are you though?
Yeah. I have. There are certain things that Abby won't let me do around the house because I don't do it up to the way her standard, and it's just safer for everyone. Cory doesn't touch Abby's laundry.
I don't touch Brooke's laundry either. She's got different things that have to be hung up, and some have to be, I feel like, hung up.
I just found out literally a month ago, bras don't get dried. It's a universal thing.
Like none of them?
Well, maybe some sports bras like go through, but any, like in general, she said bras don't get dried.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, don't dry their bras.
Make this a clip for sure, though, because I want to see what other people have to say about that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I have this thing of where I've also heard pastors talk about it, and people say things like, what equally yoked mean is it doesn't mean a 50-50. It means a 100-100. Right? And they explain it and talk about things like that, right? And I've had this thought before, and I've had this question before of, if you're actually on completely equal playing field, it is 50-50, it's 100-100, it's whatever you want to call it, and spiritually you guys are even, right? That inspiration and that motivation that both of us are talking about goes away.
You think?
So, like, I want to be better because I feel like Brooke is not better than me, but better than, like, bettering herself. And so I want to better myself.
You feel like she's growing.
Yes.
Which makes you want to not be stagnant as well.
Correct. And so, like, not that doesn't mean we couldn't both do that at the same level. Like, we wouldn't both be growing.
Yeah.
But I think that there is a different motivation. Because, like, I'm in the group text, and, like, if I've done, I go on the treadmill and I'll send a picture of it, and it'll be like calories burned like 400. And then Reg will send something.
His numbers aren't.
And it'll be like 1,400 calories burned.
There's something off there.
I agree with you.
No way.
I agree with you.
Because I'm telling you, you can bust your butt as hard as possible. And I go through it. if you're
Well, all I
burning,
gotta tell you is you're not equally yoked with Reg when it comes to workouts, man.
I'm just saying, if you 500 active calories in an hour is a really hard workout. Like that's a hard cardio workout. So the idea of getting 950 in an hour and 10 minutes,
right? But when
something in the metrics is off.
When someone is doing something more than you, it does push you, if it's healthy, to do more also.
Yeah.
But if we're both, like, if I feel like what I'm trying to say, okay, let's go back to like an exercise example, right? If both of us were going to walk on a treadmill and do a mile in 15 minutes on the treadmill, and both of us did that every single day without fail, we did this, then like, and it was just like, hey, we know we're going to do this. We know we're always going to do this. We're going to do it every day. We're never going to give an excuse. We're always going to do it. Then where does the like motivation, inspiration come from to like, you know what? I'm going to do a mile and a half. You want to do it with me or no?
Yeah.
Like, does the question make sense?
No, I mean, there's like a scenario or a situation where it's like two people could be stagnant. Like, you know, you remove the spirituality thing in anything
you're not
together.
Growing, you're dying.
And it's unhealthy for them because they're staying stuck in the same spot. So I agree with you in that sense. But the idea, I think that we would, as long as both parties are in a place where it's like, it's not about arriving.
It's about the journey.
And going further, I think, then I think that it's okay because you will all, like, you'll each continue to grow. Nobody, like, if you feel it's really dangerous, I think, when we get to a point in life or anything where it's like, what I know is what I know. It's correct. And this is my ceiling for this. I'm not willing to have the conversation any further. This is it. I'm not willing to see any other perspectives or challenge, like, hear anything else. Like, why would I? Because I have all the answers.
Right.
That's not healthy. And I would say if we find ourselves in that situation in our relationship, then we need to work on that relationship and evaluate that and say, like, let's reestablish what our goals are. What are we getting after? And because sometimes it's just about pivoting a little bit. Pivot, goalpost change.
I feel like I've just been like throwing ad libs in. Like you've been talking, I've just been like the peanut gallery.
I don't know if it's because we're later in the evening than we usually record, but like there's some yawns happening. There's random just comments being thrown in that we wouldn't probably do as much. Maybe we do. I don't know. We'll see how this plays.
Yeah, it'll be fine. I still feel at peace though.
Yeah.
I still feel really good.
Yeah.
Like it's definitely later. I mean, we've been talking for hours now. Right? But like I don't have this feeling of like I'm tired, I want to be done, I want to go to bed.
Yeah.
I'm not there yet.
Well, I always leave these, anytime you have like something like this, there's always like a moment of, I need time to process. Like I guarantee I'm going to go home. I'm not just going to get in bed. No. Like I'm going to need to chill, process, think about it, think about things maybe I would say, not I would say differently, but, new stuff comes to light. And like, you're thinking about like, oh, like this is also something I believe in deeply in this situation. I just didn't say it at the moment. Like,
but I think that like what you're talking about right now is also like this idea of growth. And like peace doesn't mean staying where you're at and being comfortable. Right.
Hiding.
Correct.
We think that
like this piece of like, we've had this talk. It's been amazing. It's been amazing spending this time with God and talking about him and having him be here with us. Right. But it's also this process of like, how can we make it better? How can we, have a better conversation with each other? How can we be more engaging for people out there? Like,
because this won't be the last time we talk about peace too. Because it's like, it's not like we're closing the book. It's like, oh, we knocked peace out. Right. Like, no, we didn't really answer anything. Off. We shared experiences. Right. We shared things that, vulnerabilities, things that we've come short on, things we've learned. And like, that's it. It's just a continuing conversation. Right. So it's like, it's weird because like, it's like, how do you end these conversations? Right. But we're really not. We're just stopping the conversation for now.
We're putting a pause button. You need a pause button.
Yeah, we're gonna be still for a little while.
Right.
Operate in peace. Woo, so let's bring it down a level.
Let's bring it down 11.
You're at 11. I need you at 5.
I'm at 11 right
No,
now.
I think that's what people say. Like whenever you're like hyped up, you're like, or maybe not 11. They're like, you're a 9.
Right.
Need a 7.
Right. I say it to my son.
You do?
Sometimes.
Does he respond well?
No. I don't think he knows. I don't think he quite understands or processes what it means.
Yeah. But he's gonna.
Okay. Now a whole nother topic just came to me. Of like, and we don't know. Like this is just a random conversation. But like my son Asi, he's 3.5. He is 3.5. He's 3.5.
He is.
And how as a father, like I think we've been talking a lot about spouses, right? And how, you said some things about, not always being the strongest person in the room and relying on other people and having a spouse that challenges you, or having a spouse that pushes you in a certain way, right? Hopefully in a healthy way, right? How as parents can we help our children experience peace more? Because it's not just like, hey, we're gonna be quiet for a minute. We're gonna play the quiet game. Yeah, have you used that one yet?
No.
Okay.
No,
One day you'll get there.
Yeah.
You'll get there one day. Right? Let's play the quiet game.
Do you think they're experiencing any peace when they're playing the quiet? They're like, don't want to say that.
But like, I definitely feel like, my kids, like there are definitely moments. Earlier today I walked upstairs and my wife isn't feeling great. She's not like sick, but she's on that line where like she feels like it could be there. So she's trying to rest. She's trying to drink lots of water, all that kind of stuff. And I walked upstairs, and my wife was sitting in bed, and she was reading. And my youngest son had just woken up from his nap. Ender had just woken up, and I walked in the room, and the TV in our bedroom was on, and Ender was laying on the floor, not on the bed. He was laying on the floor in between the bed and the TV, with his little like stuffed animals on his side, just staring up at the TV on the floor.
Yeah.
And I walked in and like, Brooke, look at him. And she kind of chuckled and I kind of chuckled. And then Brooke was like, buddy, do you want to come lay on the bed? And he turned and he went, nope. And just turned back right to where he was. And I was like, now I'm like, that kid,
He's experiencing peace.
He was peace. And he was comfortable. But he would have been more comfortable if he'd been laying in the bed. Goes back to it, right?
Could have been there.
But like, how as parents can we help our children have more peace?
Real on it, I think that's a conversation for a different time. But I think it's a great conversation. I don't know that I don't even know that I'm equipped to have that answer right now.
Well, I don't know the answer either. That's why I'm asking you.
Yeah. But
I think sometimes you ask a question you already know the answer to.
Mm-hmm.
You're just like trying to be nice or polite or like
get to your point.
Right. Exactly. No, that one I don't know the answer to.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever actually thought about it, honestly.
My gut right away now is, if we want our children to learn anything, we model it. Don't tell them how they should be or what they should be, like show them.
Well, here's what I need you to do. I need you to go get arrested and go to jail. And write some letters.
Write some letters to Austin Ender.
Write some letters.
My dear friends,
and
I pray without ceasing for you.
Yes. And just be really peaceful.
No matter what situation.
Right. And
it can be a nice prison.
And worship God. No, it has to be.
No, I want like the Roman prison.
It has to be a Roman prison from like 58 AD.
Gotcha.
Roman prison then.
I don't think I would like Roman not prison then. I'm very accustomed to air conditioning and
too much comfort, man. Air conditioning,
HBO,
air conditioning and HBO is why you don't have peace all the time because it's too comfortable.
Twitter has nothing to do with it.
True. That's why I don't watch the news though. Like like news channels. Like I refuse to watch them because it's just.
I think they're generally worthless because it's all just one side versus the other side.
Right.
It's absolutely everything I hate about
everything I hate about everything.
Yeah, it's like this is our side. People that listen ascribe to our beliefs,
Right.
our camp,
Right.
and these guys are all the
Right.
dum dums. So both sides, all of it, despise it. But we need information.
Yeah.
People that say like I don't look at the news, or like I don't like.
You said right off, like we are winding down, but you just keep bringing up things, and I just keep wanting to talking about them. Okay, let me ask you this question. So historical context wise, the disciples were like teenagers. Did you know that?
I've heard that before.
Okay.
I don't know that personally.
I don't know it personally either. I wasn't there. Do you think that the disciples looked at Jesus, like obviously as a friend, he's Lord, all this kind of stuff, but as a father figure? Is there anywhere in the text that would say that? In the text.
That's an interesting question. I can only equate that to I've had experiences being like in my late teens, 20s, and having like the cool uncle, Uncle Todd in this situation, who kind of represented all of these, like, to me, like great characteristics, fun, like I want to be like him.
Yeah. Did you know for my kids, that's you?
That's amazing. That's so cool.
Well, Ender came down. Yeah. Coco's here. My children call Cory Coco.
Don't go there.
Right. Now I know the backstory behind
Coco.
I
That's what I'm saying.
But now I do. No, but they call you Coco, and they're always pumped to see you.
Yeah.
You're like the cool uncle.
It's amazing. I've wanted that experience because I've received that kind of love, and I knew how impactful it was to me, and like to be in a spot now where I'm able to kind of like invest in like in relationship with your children
and they
our
do,
friends.
like it's so cool because they do it with you. They do it with Thomas, like my brother, their actual blood uncle, I guess. Right. Whatever you want to. Anyway, the whole reason why I went to there is because like brought up the example earlier of on the boat, storm, disciples are upstairs freaking out. Right?
We're going to die. Everything, Jesus comes up. You guys are stupid. Be still. You have little faith. Yeah.
Paraphrasing.
Yeah.
Right. And in that moment, like, could that be used as an example of like leading by example for our children of like, it seems like there's a lot going on right now. And I know you really want lemonade to drink instead of water, but we're going to be at peace here and drink water. That's a bad example, but you see what I'm getting at? Like,
I see the threads
you're
reaching for.
Is that a proper example or no?
I don't know if I would say it's proper.
Okay.
But I don't know exactly why it wouldn't be proper because I'm just thinking about like, they're thinking they're going to die. He's saying about faith. Ozzy really just wants some lemonade. He just wants a little sugar. And you said, no, it's going to be okay. You're drinking water.
Right.
I'm sure it works in some way. I want to think about it. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a good.
Well, I think we'll probably have multiple episodes over time about being fathers and being parents and
questions,
all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's a lot. But it's amazing.
But we're gonna, and it's a process where the goal is to get better. Absolutely. And the goal is to grow spiritually, as individuals in our lives, and so that equals like our families, our workplace, our communities, our churches.
And I want more peace.
Yeah.
Specifically, that surpasses my understanding.
Yeah.
I want to be so at peace that I don't know why.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make sense. Because that's what grace is.
Yeah.
That's what God's unconditional love.
Right.
It's that one is agape, right?
Yeah.
That's what that love is love that it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And that's the gospel. Now I'm going to get hyped up. Doesn't make sense. And that's why it was rejected and so hard to be received by the religious people. Everything about God takes our system and takes our box of how we built our container, that everything makes sense in this container. Right. And this is who I am. And this is my status. And grace comes in and just shakes it all up. The gospel. That's so good.
So both of us have done drugs before. You're going to think both of us have.
Sure.
And And like I'm thinking back to these moments of having what I would call that peace beyond, right? Peace that surpasses. And I'm thinking like back, like that's like the best drug.
Yeah.
Air quotes.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
And I want that more. And I want to get there, and I want to learn more and be more. And you know, honestly, what else I want to do is I want to help other people get there too. That's why Kingdom and Power exists. It's what we're building, is to get there one day. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, man. That's good.
Love you, man.
I love you, man.
Pineapples.
Love you, everybody.